Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. We are going to do a little bit of a different format, and I'm going to actually be doing a materials review video. What do I use for lighting? I'm going to try to pop a picture on the screen here of the exact light fixture so you can see what it looks like. It is a, hold on, let me look up the name, Genaray SPS 500B Spectro LED Studio 500 Bicolor light. It was recommended to me by Susan Lyon and Scott Burdick. I've used it pretty much exclusively. I do like that I'm able to control the color temperature and the intensity of the light. It's very useful. As of late, the only issue I've had with it is that occasionally if the cord that, there's a little cord that plugs in at the light fixture itself. I'll show a picture if it's not in the picture already on the screen. But that cord has started to go bad a little bit. So now if I bump the cord while I'm working, my light goes out for a minute and then kind of comes back on slowly. It's a little weird. The other thing I would recommend, which I'll also pop a picture on the screen here, is just those clamp lights. A single light bulb, clamp light. You can clamp it to your easel, your bookshelf, anything around you. They're awesome. And you can just change the bulb if you want to change the color or the brightness or anything like that. It's not that hard. It's very low profile and it's way, way, way cheaper. If you want a more budget-friendly option, a clamp light is genuinely all you need. And there have been multiple times when I've thought, why am I dealing with this heavy, fragile piece of equipment that stresses me out because I know if it breaks I can't replace it, and why am I not just using a clamp light? So I really like clamp lights. That covers my studio lighting. Now let's move on to pencils. So I actually have my little pencil pouch here, which ironically is Strathmore branded. I use these. I use the Staedtler. You cannot see it from over there. Again, there's going to be pictures over here on the screen. I don't know why I'm trying to show the camera. I use the Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencils. These are fantastic. I've used them for years. I used them the entire time I was at GCA, and even before, actually. I love them. I do not like Faber-Castell. I think Faber-Castell are some of the worst pencils I've used. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce the name of the company, but that's what it looks like. Again, they're the green ones. Yeah, they look prettier, but they're waxy and they're greasy and they smudge and they just annoy me. So do like the Mars Lumograph Staedtler pencil. I think these are awesome. The other pencil brand that the kind people at Gateway Atelier clued me into are these Mitsubishi pencils. So you can see they're like a really nice burgundy pencil. So if aesthetics are your thing, then go for these. These I think are a little bit softer than the Staedtler, but they are not that waxy, greasy kind of material that the Faber-Castells are. So I think these are pretty fantastic. They are a little bit harder to get. You can order the Staedtler Mars Lumograph from pretty much anywhere, but the Mitsubishi brand, pretty much the only place I found them consistently is Amazon and the St. Louis Art Supply online store. So if you're willing to go through a little bit more effort to get your pencils, then the Mitsubishi ones are great. The eraser I use is the Mono Eraser Tombow brand eraser, and these are fantastic. They come in different shapes, so you can get one that's kind of square, you can get one that's round like this one, and a very small point, and I think you can even actually get a slightly bigger one. But for a pencil eraser, they're fantastic, also made in Japan, like the Mitsubishi pencils. For a kneaded eraser, I generally just use the Generals or the Prismacolor one, whichever one I can get more easily at the moment. Any kind of kneaded eraser is more or less the same to me. I haven't noticed a huge difference in the brands. So the important thing is to just keep using new ones and don't let them get so old and dirty that they just start to leave like grease stains on your paper, which I have seen happen. So the old ones you can keep for other purposes, but for drawing, just keep your kneaded eraser fresh and replace it as needed. The sharpening pad, I use these, the little simple sharpening pads that you can get at most art supply stores. They usually are a couple dollars and they're really nice. They are a very fine sandpaper smoothness. I've seen some people use the Nitrum sharpening pads. I don't like those. I find them too rough for graphite. Anytime you try to sharpen something that's softer than an HB, it feels like it just breaks the pencil. So I'm not a fan. I like these. I can get ton of control. Maybe it takes me a little bit longer than a rougher sandpaper would, but I don't really care. The other thing you can do is just genuinely go to the hardware store and pick up, I think it's 250 grit sandpaper, and attach it to a wooden block and use that. Either way is fine. Like I said, I just think going with a slightly smoother sandpaper means you'll have fewer frustrating moments where your pencil snaps and you have to start the whole process over again. If you're interested in learning more about the pencil sharpening thing, then you can see my video on how to sharpen art pencils, which I will link in the description. Now onto paper. Now paper is one of the things I get probably the most questions about, and I feel like sometimes people don't believe me, but this is genuinely all I use. I use the Drawing Series 400 Strathmore paper. I don't even bother with the heavyweight kind. It's fine. It's a good paper, but I just don't think it's necessary, and it typically costs a little bit more. But this is genuinely all I use. I have so many pads of these full of drawings, full of many different sizes. I use these all the time. If I'm rendering with graphite on white paper, it's exclusively the only paper I use. I don't like rendering on the Fabriano paper, the Arches paper as well. If it's toned, it's one thing, but if it's just white paper, just use this. All of the cast drawings that I've ever done have been on this paper. All of the self-portrait drawings that I've done on white paper have been on this paper. It's actually really important to keep your materials consistent if you are looking to get those really smooth, refined results. We often change our materials so frequently when we're just starting out and we're trying different things that we can't actually achieve any consistency, and we can't, learn our materials. So if you stick with the same paper and the same pencil brand, then you're going to eventually learn the material and be able to use it to the best of its abilities as you practice bettering your own abilities. So I recommend just keeping it simple. Go with these. Now, for tone paper, that's a little bit different. I don't do a ton of rendered drawings on tone paper that I haven't toned myself. But if I'm doing like a portrait sketch or just a quick drawing and I don't have a lot of time but I want to use graphite and white chalk, then I use the Teintes pastel paper. These are fantastic for short drawings. I haven't done long rendered drawings on these in a while. I used to. So the other paper that I use generally when I'm doing rendered drawings on tone paper is the Arches natural white watercolor paper. But this paper is great for toning because it is a watercolor paper, so you can tone it with actual just watercolor, or you can do what I typically do, which is I use the Sennelier walnut stain ink, and this has a little bit of shellac in it, which I think makes the paper surface a little bit more resilient, and it's fantastic. I've not found a drawing surface that I actually like more. There is the difficulty of toning your own paper, which can be a little bit frustrating and tedious at times, but like I said, it's worth it to me for the paper quality that I can get. As far as paper I don't really like, I don't like the Fabriano. I've never liked it. I used it for a figure drawing once at GCA, and it was my least favorite figure drawing I've ever done there, and actually the only one I still have. I find that it's a very frustrating experience to render on it if you're really into, getting that tight finish and you're willing to put in all the time to dot pick and get a refined surface on that paper. Then I think what's nice about the Fabriano is that it is resilient to that. Like, you can really fight for the maximum amount of surface quality that you want, but it has been recommended by a lot of people that are, friends, classmates, etc. Now let's go into painting stuff. Paint brushes. I have a random assortment of the brushes that I've been using the most lately. As you can see, most of them are these Utrecht green handle brushes. The green handle just means round. The other Utrecht brushes, whether they be flat, filbert, fan, they just have different color bands on the top. These are fantastic. I've used them all throughout my time at GCA. I continue to use them to this day. It's still the brush that I have the most of compared to other brushes. My only complaint is that they are a little bit quick to lose their point, so I do feel like I have to purchase them pretty regularly. The flip side is that I use them the most, so that is why they start to fray the most quickly. The other two brushes I want to mention right now, but I can't say that they have been stress tested in the same way that the Utrecht ones have, so I will update you guys in a future video as to if they're holding up well enough over time, but I have lately been using the Klein brushes by Rosemary and the Rosemary and Company Eclipse pointed rounds. So I've used the Eclipse combers, I think they're called. They're the flat ones, again, to see picture. And those are great for like fun textures and stuff. I can't say I use them all that often. Since I use rounds all the time, I'm curious to see how the Eclipses hold up. But in terms of just usage, I've used these a couple times now, washed them, you know, taken care of them. They've both held their shape great, and I've loved using them as brushes. They lay down the paint wonderfully. Time will tell if I keep liking them. The other thing I always have in my brush holder is a fan brush. So this is actually the Badger Fan Series 37, and it's great. It's very puffy. It's, you know, it almost feels like a makeup brush kind of texture. And I use these a lot to knock down glare and to basically just to knock down glare, so they don't get a lot of hard use, but they're soft and they're nice, and they knock down the glare in my painting, so they do exactly what I want them to do. The other brushes that I always have in my brush stash are bristles. So I always have bristle brushes on hand. These are mostly my bristle rounds. These are all different brands. This is the Princeton Dakota brand. This is just says Royal China. It was thrifted. These two are silver. No, this is a silver bristling brush, and I really like these. These have held up wonderfully. So if you are looking for a good bristle round, I actually highly recommend these above pretty much any others I've used. The other ones that I've had pretty good luck with, surprisingly so, are the Winsor & Newton Winton bristles. So Winton is like their cheaper brand, but it holds up great. So I don't know why more people don't use them, because I've had this brush 10 years now. This is a 10-year-old brush in my hand. Now it's time for me to actually talk about the one gifted item in this video. And I got these brushes from Artify. They kindly sent me these. The deal when Artify sent me this brush set, which I'll show you more detail in a minute, was basically if I liked them, I would tell people, and if I didn't, I would give them feedback. So it didn't cost me anything to get these, and I didn't have to promise anything to receive them. So this is just because I've enjoyed using these and I do want to recommend them for a couple of reasons. The case it comes in is fine. There's nothing that special about the case. It comes with all these brushes. They're like very tiny brushes. So these are mostly for detail things and for really like refined small moments in your painting, and doing really like little details. I have found that they've held up beautifully to use. In fact, this is one of the bigger sizes that they have in the brush set, and I used this a ton when I was making that red drapery painting. It's held its shape beautifully, and the reason I'm recommending these is because they're actually incredibly cost effective. If they were very expensive, then I wouldn't recommend them specifically more than the other brushes I've told you guys about. I'd recommend them at the same level. Because these are so cost effective, I actually recommend them even more, because if you are newer to painting and you are just starting out, then it's just a very low investment for a brush set that's actually very nice. So I can give these my honest recommendation. I did really like using them. So yeah, the one gifted item in my review video. And now on to paints. But before I'm going to start with my paint carrier, so actually technically this was gifted too, because I won it in a giveaway. It wasn't like gifted to me personally. It was, hey, we're doing a giveaway and add your name, and I added mine and I won it. And I did later purchase the brush carrier that accompanies it. So I have a matching brush carrier that matches this paint tube carrier from Apollo Paint Carrier. I should say the name. This paint tube carrier though I use all the time because it just keeps the colors that I use the most frequently near me. I don't have to rummage for them every time I want to use them. They're always right there in this holder, so I literally use this all the time. And I actually can't recommend it enough. It's super well made. It's held up. It's covered in paint. I mean, I've not been kind to it, and it's brand new basically. Now to get inside the brush carrier, this is what it looks like on the inside. It has one giant tube. That's my lead white. That's the biggest, and then all these other ones are regular sized tube holders. I will say the one tube that I've struggled to fit in here easily are like these Rublev tubes, because they're a little bit extra big. They fit just fine. They just stick out a little further. Now onto the paints themselves. I mainly use brands Michael Harding and Gamblin. I use the Michael Harding pigments that are series 1 because I love the texture of Michael Harding paints, but because they are on the pricier side, I don't like to buy like their series 2, 3, 4, etc., because the cost just gets a little bit prohibitive for me. And Gamblin is really nice and a good brand, and you can get it anywhere. So if I'm in a pinch, if I'm running out of paint and I need to be able to pick it up at Michael's, the only art supply store semi-near me, then I just will go get the Gamblin brand, and I think that that's fine. The reason that I don't get the Gamblin for all of my paint colors is because I find their pigments a little stiff. But Gamblin cadmiums are wonderful. Gamblin Ivory Black is great. A bunch of the Gamblin paints are really wonderful. So I typically will use Gamblin for the more expensive paints because, again, they are still going to be cheaper relative to Michael Harding. And then I use all of the Michael Harding Series 1 paints. The exception is, of course, the Crimnance White. Now, I do love using the lead white. I know a lot of people are very hesitant to use lead, and I understand why, and it's not an issue. I think you can still make beautiful paintings without it. And I'll recommend the replacement that I've also personally used if you don't want to use the lead white. But yeah, I use the Michael Harding Crimnance White. This is the one mixed in walnut oil. I actually wanted to get the one in linseed oil and I misordered. So that was my bad. Generally, I would prefer the one with linseed oil. It dries a little bit faster. Walnut oil is pretty slow drying. That's what I recommend. Now, if you don't want to use the lead white, then what I recommend, and I'll have a picture, is Permalba white. Now, this is titanium white and zinc. I know zinc says it's going to crack. So far, I've been using it since I think about 5 years ago now is when I first used it, and the paintings that I made 5 years ago are still fine. So, you know, you can try it out for yourself and see if you like it. Again, I had no problem using it. I found it a very good replacement for lead white because it wasn't as cold and harsh as titanium. Now for why I don't recommend Rublev. So I think the mission behind what Rublev's doing is very interesting. I really like the way that they don't want to use fillers, and they have a very, important mission behind what they're doing. I just don't like the paint texture. Now that's gonna make my next thing a little funny because what I do recommend from Rublev is this Venetian medium. I think this is fantastic. The Venetian medium is a gel medium of ground leaded crystal glass, and it adds beautiful body to the paint. It's really, really nice. Like, I cannot recommend this as a painting medium enough. I also like the Velasquez medium from Rublev, so I think Rublev actually makes some of the best painting mediums out there right now. Okay, editing me popping in here. I cannot believe I forgot to say what palette I use. I know I've put this in the description before, but still it deserves its own whole video of me talking about how much I love it. This is my Traditional Palette Company palette. This is what it looked like in the beginning whenever I first got it. It's zebra wood, and this is what it looks like now because it's had many years of loving use and me not being the most careful. You can see I've let paint dry on there a couple times. This is also Traditional Palette Company palette, and I've really abused this when I've let paint dry on it in all kinds of wacky ways. So all my doing, the palette's fantastic. Both of these are amazing. The reason I love these so much too is because they are basically ready to use the second you get them in the mail. A lot of handmade palettes are too absorbent and you have to oil them out very regularly. These didn't have that issue. So if you're gonna invest in a handmade palette, look no further than Traditional Palette Company. That brings me to painting surfaces. So if I were to talk about every painting surface I've tried, we'd be here all day. So I'm just gonna stick to the ones I recommend, which is, if you want to prep your own surface, I recommend the acrylic golden gesso. I actually have used the Rublev lead ground gessos in the past, and they are very nice as well. I just get a little bit nervous that I can't sand the surface, so I do actually want to maybe try some of their other grounds and gessos that they have. But I've tried this, and this is just such an easy, it's so easy. Like, I can't recommend anything else. If you're going to prep your own surface, that would be easier. You put a layer on, you sand it, you put a layer on, you sand it, you put a layer on, you sand it, and you're done. Like, it's fantastic. And you can keep doing that until you get the surface you want. If you want to do more layers, you can. This is the only thing I've used that's given me a very consistent surface. And I like that I'm able to rely on it, and that I know what to expect, and that I don't end up with any surprises. This is my favorite painting surface to use, hands down. If you're going to use linen, I recommend Clausen's 13 double primed or Centurion OPLX, I think it's called. All that will be on the screen and the description. I think that those are both great linens. The Centurion's a more budget-friendly option, and the Clausen's is like a fancier option. I'm going to speed run through the last couple things because this video is already taking a little bit longer than I meant for it to. Varnish, I use Gambar Gloss. Spray retouch varnish, I use the Winsor & Newton Professional Spray Retouch. Okay, for tape, don't waste your money on fancy artist tape. Buy painter's tape from Home Depot. It is cheaper. For clamps, I love these DeWalt adjustable clamps, which actually brings me to a clamp that I don't recommend you guys use. I've had these dry rot on me and actually literally explode This is good only if you're using a very, very sturdy surface. If you're painting on stretched canvas and you try to clamp it, they are so strong and they are so stiff that you will actually puncture your canvas or dent it. And I've also had it when I've used it on panels and it's scratched or dented my gesso panel surface, so don't recommend. One thing I forgot, this is just my palette knife. It is a Creative Mark brand palette knife and it has lasted me years. I don't use any fancy palette knives, so yeah, Creative Mark palette knife. This last thing is a bit of a bonus thing. I have the Pochade palette. This is great. I think it's really nice. I've actually also used it for just doing little still lifes around the house if I want to do an alla prima still life and I don't feel like setting up a whole easel and moving a bunch of stuff around. I will just, attach my painting surface to this with either magnets or with tape. I don't really use clamps to do it, but I use a magnetic tape on the back of a panel and I just attach it. And I just use this and I actually find it very, very practical and really wonderful. And like I said, I use it for more than just plein air painting. And so it has gotten quite a bit of use and I highly recommend it as well. Now for two things that I cannot actually share because they're in use right now, but one is the tripod. I use the Genaray tripod. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. I did double check it and now I'm blanking now that it's time for me to actually say it, but I use that tripod. It will be linked. I cannot recommend it enough. It has taken a beating. It's used all the time and it's held up beautifully and it's not shown any signs of wear, so it's still like it's brand new. And my camera, I now use the Sony FX30 Cinema Line camera. It was a slightly higher end camera for me when I finally decided to invest a little bit more in my filming setup, so you can take that for what it is. And then my mics, I use the Rode Wireless Go 2. I think that takes me to the end of my materials list. So yeah, this video ended up being way longer than I thought it would be, but I didn't realize how much I had to say on materials. And honestly, I have more that I didn't even get to for the more obscure stuff. So maybe I'll do a second one of these videos in the future. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope it was helpful and I will see you for the next one.